Well, welcome to MissouriNet.com. I'm Bill Pollock. A topic that comes up quite frequently, and it's one of those that I can see both sides of the story. It's integrating homeschool athletes with high school athletes who attend public schools, and should they be allowed to play together? Should homeschoolers be allowed to be a part of MSHA programs? And on one Google Hangout, we heard from Dr. Kerwin Erhan, the executive director from MSHA, who represents the schools and says member schools are against this. We had a story on MissouriNet.com, which you can find linked with this story in Google Hangout, that came from State Representative Elijah Har, who makes the argument that homeschoolers should be allowed to play. And so we want to get a different view, and so I bring along David Staley. He's a football coach for a homeschool team. And David, appreciate you joining us. First of all, where do you coach?
I coach for the Lighthouse Chargers. We're a homeschool team based out of Springfield, Missouri.
How many homeschool football teams are there in the state?
In Missouri or in the nation?
Yeah, in Missouri.
In Missouri, that are registered with the Homeschool National Association. There's our program out of Springfield. There's Christ Prep out of Kansas City, and a newer program out of St. Louis, the Central Panthers.
Okay, explain a little bit, because Dr. Erhan talked about how there are MSHA schools who will allow homeschool teams to play them so that they can get some games during the regular season. Just kind of fill us in a little bit as to how that works with your homeschool schedule.
As far as how we're allowed to play the Missouri schools?
Yeah, just what your season consists of.
Well, we from the beginning of our program, we had tried to get involved to be able to play the Missouri schools. MSHA ruled that they would not allow their teams to play homeschool teams. So we spent the first 9 years of our existence traveling to Oklahoma every Friday or Saturday to play games. They finally changed that. They changed their bylaws and allowed us to become what they call an affiliate or an associate member, and basically took the rule out that didn't allow their schools to play us. So this past year, we got to play Missouri schools for the first time. We started playing them, and we got to play about half our schedule was filled with Missouri public schools.
Now, just to bring our viewers kind of up to speed, Representative Elijah Har wants to integrate. He said he was a homeschool student. He says many of them have to travel long distances if they want to be a part of homeschool teams. And this is how you and I got to know each other, because as I tweeted out this story, you had tweeted back with me, and I want to make sure that I remember correctly. But after reading our article, you said that the state rep who brought up the bill makes some great points, but that the issues kind of go a little bit deeper than that. And you said there's quite a few homeschool people that are against the idea. Can you explain a little bit more about your thoughts?
Well, it's a great idea. I understand why Elijah brought this up, because there are kids in the rural communities, that we've had kids play for us that have driven 2 hours to come down and play for us, how far away they wanted to be able to play football. And I understand that in rural communities that, there's just not the opportunities that there are in their larger cities. I mean, like here in Springfield, we've got our football program. We've got, I believe, 3 different basketball programs. There's volleyball. There's track and field. Homeschool kids here in Springfield, Kansas City, St. Louis, they pretty much have all the opportunities that public school kids. In the rural areas, they don't. Our concern with this new rule would be that homeschool, that's going to dilute the homeschool athletic population. Some of these kids might choose to go to public schools as opposed to playing for their local homeschool. And then you throw in the fact that most homeschool parents, don't want. There's a reason they homeschool. They don't want to, be in the public school system. And based on what I've read in what I've read of what they're issuing, I mean, they'll basically have to abide by everything the public schools do, basically become a public school student without being in the classroom.
And they had a 12-year-old that was at the state capitol who said, I just don't do well in a classroom setting, and so homeschool works for me. And there are those situations where a kid may just do better, learning in a small group, learning by themselves, and so you certainly feel for those kids. The thing that I thought about, because we've kind of talked about football here a little bit, but The cynical side of me says, all right, let's look at basketball, and let's take an AAU coach who wants to get a particular kid into a different program from where he's living, and do they kind of bend the rules and say, well, this kid's a homeschooler, so we want him to go play at school B instead of school A where he lives, and so that he's got better opportunities to play in college. I mean, is that a concern at all, or am I thinking maybe a little too far out of the box?
Well, if I understood the wording correctly, they will only be eligible to play for the school district they live in. And AAU is is kind of given a black eye, to sports in general, in my opinion, and in the basketball world. And one of those concerns is that these students will or whatever, and to say I'm homeschooled at this address and go to that school. That is a concern. I don't believe in the basketball world it's going to be that big of a concern. The basketball homeschool situation has just exploded. Starting this Monday, the Homeschool National Tournament is here in Springfield. There'll be 10,000 kids and families down here for the Homeschool National Basketball Tournament. There's homeschool basketball has reached a level that is at an equal to a very high level of public school basketball. So I don't think you'll see the homeschool basketball players look to leave because of that. Homeschool basketball players on a regular basis. There's a young man at North Carolina. I think Jackson is his last name. Justin Jackson maybe plays for North Carolina. That play college women players in the country is at UConn, and she played at the Homeschool National Tournament. So I don't think you'll see kids leave the homeschool world because they get the exposure they need, because they are basically AAU teams. They play year round. They get the exposure they need to go on to the next level.
David, you may or may not know the answer to this. We're talking with David Staley. He's a homeschool football coach who's against the idea of having homeschoolers play with MISHA schools, part of their districts. What is the percentage? As Representative Har has talked about, there's kids that have to travel. You mentioned travel 2 hours away. What would you say the percentages of those kids that are a part of homeschool teams that have to travel extraordinary distances or have extraordinary circumstances that make it difficult for them to play?
I can just speak for our team. We've got between our varsity program and our junior high program, we've got about 70. We average between 75 and 80 kids in our program. The majority live within 30 minutes of where we practice. I would say maybe we have one or two per year that travel a great distance. But the majority, now, that's because those are the ones who are willing to travel that far. I'm not saying there's other kids 2 and 3 hours away that wouldn't want to play for us, but we average kids a year that travel more than an hour to come play for us.
My gut tells me this isn't a bill that will get passed, but I mean, is there a compromise that could be made? Do you see a situation where there's kids that maybe have over an hour's travel distance that exemptions could be made where they could play with MISHA schools if there was a certain waiver? I mean, is there any compromise on this, or is it just cut and dry black and white?
No, I would agree with that. I think if they applied for a special waiver, due to there's no opportunities in their area, or whatever, I'm not opposed to that. I don't know how the public schools feel about that. I know there's some concern in the school world and vice versa from the public school world that of the poaching talent and leaving the other kids behind. If there's a great talent, the public school coach is going to say, give him the waiver. If he's an average player, he may say, no, we don't need him, don't give him the waiver. So there's concern about that. There's concern about them approaching our kids that play for us and say, hey, you're really good, come play for me, you live in my district. That was one of the accusations that faced us from the very beginning, is that we were going to go poach kids from the public schools to come play for us. From our aspect, I used to tell people if I could convince a parent to homeschool their kid just so he could play football for me, I'd be selling refrigerators or something, because that's a pretty hard sell. But so there's some concern there. My thought for these smaller areas, more parents just need to get involved. Basketball is easy to start up. You only need 7 or 8 kids. You can start a basketball program. On the football side, I believe Missouri underutilizes 8-man football. We started out as an 8-man program before we had enough kids to move to 11-man. I think a lot of these rural areas could start 8-man football. I believe there's 20 or 30 schools in Missouri playing 8-man football right now. They could schedule teams like that. I think it's just a matter of more parents getting involved in the homeschool world, and this really wouldn't be.
Well, that's a good point. And, one of the other things, David, is you and I were communicating that you said that there's an area for need and certainly an area that could grow are individual sports such as golf and wrestling. And so there's other opportunities out there besides football.
Oh, absolutely. I know in the individual sports, we here, again, Springfield is kind of a hub for the national championships of homeschool. Football is the only one that doesn't hold their national championship here. We go to Panama City, but in the national championships this spring, there'll be golf national championships. There's volleyball. There's track and field. Like I said, one of the biggest areas missing is tennis and wrestling. Now I know a lot of those homeschool kids have the opportunity to wrestle for club teams or play tennis on a club level. But as far as in schools, yeah, the individual sports are the one that seem to be lacking.
David, I really appreciate your time. This is great insight. It's something that has just been, kind of brought to my attention in recent weeks, and now to kind of really get a better understanding of this. Certainly great to hear both sides of the story. And people, as they're watching this, they see you holding a phone. I mean, that's, we're kind of, sometimes everything works, sometimes parts work. So we got to piece it together.
Technology is a wonderul thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And just so I don't know if you've heard, I did hear this morning that it passed the group that was trying to pass it. It passed 9-2 in their committee, so it is going to a vote. I did hear that this morning, and I'm like you. I expect it to pass, and we will just have to see what the fallout is.
Yeah, very good. Well, listen, David, again, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch up with you as this story develops.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Bill.
Yep, thank you. David Staley, who's a football coach for the Lighthouse Christian Chargers homeschool football team, joining us on this Google Hangout. Thanks for watching us at MissouriNet.com.